You describe it at one point as a mixer. You say in the New York Times op-ed, you said, think of it this way. The unemployed aren't leaving work. They're changing work, and change takes time. The unemployed and potential employers are like single people at a giant mixer. There are lots of opportunities, but most are unlikely to find the perfect match right away. What does this mean? That the enhanced unemployment benefit has bought people a little time to reconsider what their future is?
I think that's exactly right. But it's not even just that they're sitting at home reconsidering. It's that it takes time to actually apply for jobs. I've heard from lots of workers who are applying for jobs right now. They're just trying to find a job that's a good fit for their skill set. Employers are trying to find workers who are a good fit for them. And all these people meeting and figuring each other out and getting hired, it just takes some time. Just the same way that, you don't pick up a new spouse overnight. It's actually kind of hard to pick up a new employee overnight. And a lot of people don't want to go back to the kind of throwaway jobs where we see extremely high turnover. Republicans are pointing to the $300 payments. Those payments are going to end in like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
People know that. They want a job that they're going to be able to hang on to in September. So they might take a little bit more time right now to find the right job, and not a job that may even end before September even comes around.
So more than anecdotally, we see, as I've been driving across America or even here in New York, I see signs, help wanted. People can start immediately. Restaurants, bars, service-oriented businesses are saying they just can't hire enough people. Is that tied to the $300, or is that tied to this psychological matter that you're talking about? Or is it all of the above? There are some people who are not sure when they go back to work. They're not sure what happens to their kids. Now we're finding out most kids will be in school, but caregivers are not all that readily available. So it sounds like there are a lot of things affecting people right now.
I think there are absolutely a lot of factors, right? So some people don't have their kids back in childcare. That's going to be a factor for them. There are some people who found that, restaurant work, retail work, the kinds of things they were doing before, it's become more hazardous. And I don't just mean the threat of the virus, but people have been very confrontational with each other. You turn on the news and find out that a cashier gets shot because she told you to put on a mask, and it's a totally different kind of job. You have employers who think they should be able to hire people like it was 2019, but people have actually learned that these jobs are more hazardous, they're more confrontational, and maybe they're looking for something that's going to be a little bit different. And so I think you've got a mismatch between employer expectations and worker expectations in some of the jobs right now. And then I think the other thing people aren't talking enough about is, we've got pretty closed borders around the world. And so a lot of the kinds of jobs where you see those help wanted signs, they are looking for immigrants. They're looking for people who might come over on a guest worker visa, and none of those guys are coming over.
What an interesting thing, Betsy, if our immigration policy in this country was not the Department of Security for the southwestern border, but in fact a real comprehensive immigration policy, because we are at that moment in American history where we are not giving birth to enough people to fill the amount of work we're going to have in this country.
Well, I think the U.S. has always depended on the enrichment that comes from having people come from all over the world and join the U.S. labor market and try to make, their case in the United States, make their lives in the U.S. And I think we do suffer greatly when we don't have people coming over. Immigrants tend to be younger. They tend to work more hours. And that's a real help to, as you point out, an aging labor force population like the United States.
I want to show you a poll by Pew that was conducted in January of 2021. The question is, have you seriously considered changing occupation or field of work? In 2010, 52% of people said so. In 2021, this is at the end of COVID, 66% of people said so. So bottom line is the workforce is always looking for something better. One of the arguments behind things like universal basic income is imagine giving people the freedom to find their job that suits them as opposed to be forced to work in a job that suits them. There's some economic animal spirit that comes out of that, right? When you have people who are working, doing things that they want to do versus things that they just have to do.
what makes an economy productive is when each and every worker is as productive as they can be. That means doing the kind of work in which they are going to be able to contribute the most compared to something else. And when people take more time to get some training or to just search for a really good match, then overall it benefits not just the worker, but it'll benefit the overall macro economy. But that's a reallocation. It takes some time. Look, 50% means, yeah, a lot of people are typically looking for new work. 66 is so much higher than that. Mm-hmm. And I think what the V-shaped people, the people who told you we were going to get a V-shape, they thought it was going to be so much lower than the 52%. Mm-hmm. They thought, everybody will just go back to doing the exact same thing. Nobody will change occupations. And now what we're seeing is more people than normal want a change. And I think so many of us, whether you're in a job currently, whether you're out of work, whether you lost work during the pandemic, so many people are asking themselves, do I need to be doing something different to get the most out of my career and get the most out of my personal life?